Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Assistant Sheriff Chris Jones, and I'm here to brief you on additional details as we know them today, reference the officer-involved shooting that occurred on Tuesday, October 27th, 2020. The officers that were involved in this OIS are assigned to the Investigative Services Division, Gang Crimes Bureau. They work in plainclothes capacity, and as such, they do not wear body-worn cameras. The officers were wearing tactical vests with insignias that clearly identified them as police, and we do have body-worn camera from the patrol officers who were on scene. We also have surveillance camera from inside the convenience store. We'll show those after my remarks. This is OIS number 17 for this year. It is fatal number 9. At this time last year, we had 14 OISs, and 10 of those were fatal. This event began as a shooting near the area of Desert Inn and Maryland Parkway on October 27th at approximately 10:30 a.m. An individual identified as Maurice Parker was identified as a suspect in that shooting, and that was based on witness statements, surveillance video, as well as casings from that scene were matched with the firearm that Mr. Parker had on him when he was contacted by officers. Those casings were linked forensically through our NIBIN system. The officer-involved shooting occurred in the 2500 block of North Pecos Road, Las Vegas, Nevada, 89115, and that's in Northeast Area Command. You can see the map to my left. The officers involved are Sergeant Stephen Perry. Sergeant Perry is 52 years old. He's been with LVMPD since 1999. In this incident, Sergeant Perry was armed with a Glock 17 9mm equipped with a tactical light. The investigation revealed that Sergeant Perry fired 1 round. Second officer involved is Detective Eric Stafford, Stafford. Detective Stafford is 35 years old. He's been with Las Vegas Metro since 2008. In this incident, Detective Stafford was armed with a Remington 870 12-gauge shotgun. It was equipped with a tactical light, and the investigation revealed that Detective Stafford fired 1 round. The third detective involved is Detective Julian Pappas, Pappas. Detective Pappas is 31 years old, and he's been with Las Vegas Metro since 2014. In this incident, Detective Pappas was armed with a Glock 19 9mm. The investigation revealed that he fired 8 rounds. Lastly is Detective Solon McGill, Solon McGill, McGill. Detective McGill is 41 years old, and he's been with Las Vegas Metro since 2013. In this incident, Detective McGill was armed with a Wilson Combat 1911 .45 caliber handgun. The investigation revealed that he fired 3 rounds during this incident. The suspect was identified as Maurice Parker. Mr. Parker is 34 years of age. He's a black male, 6'1", 235 pounds. He's pictured to my left. As I mentioned before, he was also the suspect who was identified in the shooting that occurred earlier that morning. Mr. Parker was armed with a Taurus G2C .40 caliber handgun. It was loaded with 10 rounds in the magazine. Mr. Parker's charges, had he survived, would have been shooting into an occupied structure, conspiracy to discharge a gun within a vehicle or prohibited area, prohibited person in possession of a firearm, resisting an officer with a deadly weapon, and assault with a deadly weapon on a public officer. Details of this OIS. On Tuesday, October 27, 2020, at approximately 10:30 a.m., a shooting occurred in the 3300 block of Brussels, Brussels Street, and that's near DI, Desert Inn, and Maryland Parkway. It was reported that several shots were fired into a vehicle by a male who was later identified as Maurice Parker. Fortunately, no one was injured in this event. At approximately 8:25 p.m. that same day, gang detectives were conducting a follow-up and investigating the shooting. Detectives learned that Mr. Parker was employed as a clerk at a convenience store located in the 2500 block of North Pecos. Sergeant Perry, along with detectives Pappas, McGill, and Stafford, drove to the store to arrest Mr. Parker for the shooting. As detectives approached the store, they immediately spotted Mr. Parker standing behind the cash register. Sergeant Perry, the rest of the detectives, and 2 patrol officers made entry into the store and gave Mr. Parker verbal commands to keep his hands in the air on the back of his head and to not move. Mr. Parker initially complied and placed his hands on his head and faced away from the officers as he was instructed. As Sergeant Perry continued to issue verbal commands, Mr. Parker reached into his waistband and produced a handgun and turned toward the officers, and we'll show you video of that shortly. Simultaneously, Sergeant Perry, Detective Pappas, Detective McGill, and Detective Stafford fired their weapons, striking Mr. Parker. Officers immediately summoned medical personnel, but Mr. Parker succumbed to his injuries at the scene. This time I'll show you both body-worn camera footage, and then we'll show you surveillance footage from the convenience store of the shooting. You'll see that they make contact with him. He initially complies, and then he'll quickly reach into his waistband, lifting his shirt to pull out his firearm as he turns towards the officers. This is a slowed down version of that fisheye camera. That's the firearm that he was reaching for. Here's another perspective from the body-worn camera.
Do not go. Do not move. Put the hands on top of your head. Yes, sir. Turn around slowly. Do not move. Do not go on your knees. Stand up straight. Do not move. Interlock your fingers. Stand up straight. That's all I got. Any other employee out of here?
Don't step to your right.
Keep your hands on top of your head.
You can see in that slowed down version as he starts to lift his shirt and reach into his waistband for that firearm that was later recovered nearby inside the store, and that's the firearm that was in the holster. I'll take any questions.
Does the suspect have like any history of violence or a record of violence or something like that?
Yes, he has firearms charges that are out of California, Utah, and other charges that are out of Nevada. In addition to that, he was on federal supervision for prohibited person in possession of a firearm.
And that shooting, the first that happened, I believe that during the morning happened very close to that location.
No, that's in a different area of town. The shooting is in the 2500 block of North Pecos. So Pecos, north of Lake Mead. And that shooting occurred earlier in the day near Desert Inn and Maryland Parkway.
And do you have like any reason for that other shooting?
We believe that it was narcotics related.
And the witnesses were the ones that actually told you that he was a clerk, and that's why you were able to find it so quick.
So those witnesses in that shooting were not aware that he was a clerk. No, we learned that he was a clerk later on through the investigation.
Are the officers on leave?
Those officers are on paid administrative leave, as is routine, while the investigation continues. All right. Thank you very much.